An Arab millionaire hires a poor girl as a translator and discovers she is the true heir to his empire. Before we dive into the story, leave a comment and tell us which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Khalil al-Rashid had no patience for incompetence. At 35, he had turned his father's small oil business into a diverse international conglomerate based in New York. His angular face, neatly trimmed beard, and piercing brown eyes rarely showed any emotion other than calculated determination. "You're fired," he said calmly to the Arabic translator, a middle-aged man who had incorrectly translated a crucial clause in a $50 million contract. "Gather your things and leave in 15 minutes. The same morning, he fired his fifth translator in 6 months. Khalil received a call from Hassan, his personal assistant. "Sir, we found the person you were looking for. She's also a translator. She's finishing her master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies at Columbia, speaks Arabic fluently, and has outstanding references." "Bring her today," Khalil ordered. Lucy Mitchell was running late. She rushed through the busy streets of Manhattan, trying not to spill the cheap coffee she was holding while juggling a stack of books and a crumpled resume. At 25, she was a mix of fierce intelligence and chronic disorganization, with wavy red hair that seemed to constantly escape any attempt to keep it neat. When she entered the towering Al-Rashid International building, she stumbled, spilling coffee on her only presentable white blouse. "Perfect," she muttered, trying to blot the stain with a thin napkin. She was 5 minutes late for the interview when the elevator took her to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a sleek reception area. A man in a flawless suit was waiting for her, looking impatient. "Miss Mitchell?" "Mr. Al-Rashid does not tolerate lateness." Before she could apologize, a tall man walked out of a conference room. Lucy felt her stomach drop as he looked at the coffee stain on her blouse, then at her messy hair, and finally into her eyes. "You're the linguist from Columbia?" he asked with a slight accent. "Yes, sir. Lucy Mitchell. I apologize for being late, and for the—" She gestured to the stain. A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Follow me. You have 5 minutes to convince me I'm not wasting my time." As she followed him into an office with a panoramic view of Manhattan, Lucy had no idea her life was about to change completely. Khalil's office was minimalist, dominated by a glass and steel desk. He didn't offer her a seat. "Your resume says you speak Arabic fluently. Prove it." Without hesitation, Lucy answered in perfect Arabic. "I grew up listening to my grandfather speak this beautiful language. He taught me to love not just the words, but also the culture and history behind them." A slight lift of his eyebrows was the only sign that Khalil was impressed. He continued in Arabic, moving through increasingly obscure dialects, testing her relentlessly. Lucy not only answered correctly but occasionally corrected his literary references, something none of his previous translators had dared to do. "You corrected me," he said, switching back to English. "My deepest apologies," Lucy replied, realizing her mistake. "I didn't mean to." "No," he interrupted. "You were right to do so. Al-Mutanabi's poem was indeed written during his exile, not before." He studied her for a moment before finally gesturing to a chair. "Sit down." While he skimmed her resume, Lucy looked around the office. There were no personal photos, only awards and expensive abstract art. "Why do you need this job, Miss Mitchell? A Columbia graduate could find more prestigious positions." Lucy considered lying, but something about those scrutinizing eyes made her choose honesty. "I need the money, Mr. Al-Rashid. I have significant student debt, a tiny apartment with outrageous rent, and a master's thesis to finish. Your job posting offered a salary that would solve a lot of my problems." "And what if I told you the job requires full availability, including international travel with little notice?" Lucy didn't hesitate. "I would ask when I start." A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late." He stood up, signaling that the interview was over. "Hassan will show you the contract terms." As she was about to leave, he added, "And Miss Mitchell, buy a few extra blouses to keep at the office. Accidents happen." Outside the building, Lucy jumped with excitement and immediately called her best friend Zoe. "I did it! I'm going to be the personal translator for an insanely rich Arab tycoon." "Really? That Al-Rashid guy with the serious face? I saw an article about him in Forbes. Incredibly rich and incredibly boring." He's not boring. He's intense, Lucy defended. Besides, the salary is nearly triple what I'd make anywhere else. Well, that calls for a celebration. Dinner at my place tonight? Lucy smiled as she walked through the streets of New York. For the first time in years, she felt like things were finally turning around. Little did she know that, at that very moment, her new boss was ordering a full background check on her. The next morning, Lucy arrived at work 15 minutes early, wearing a hastily bought suit that had cost her almost all of her last paycheck from the university coffee shop. She had spent half the night studying up on Al-Rashid International and its mysterious CEO. Hassan greeted her with an approving nod. "Mr. Al-Rashid is on a conference call. Let me show you to your workspace." Her workspace turned out to be a full office right next to Khalil's with a view of Central Park. A sleek desk with a top-of-the-line computer, a small library of dictionaries and language manuals, and even a comfy couch. "This is mine?" Lucy asked in disbelief. "Mr. Al-Rashid believes that the right environment leads to the right results," Hassan said, handing her a new smartphone. "This is your company phone. Mr. Al-Rashid may contact you at any time." "Any time?" "He rarely sleeps," Hassan said with a knowing smile. "Oh, and this is yours too." He handed her a corporate credit card for work-related expenses, including building a proper wardrobe. Lucy stared at the black no-limit card. "This seems dangerously tempting. Mr. Al-Rashid values discretion and professionalism above all. It would be wise to reflect that in your choices." The door to the main office opened, and Khalil stepped out, speaking rapidly in Arabic on his phone. He paused when he saw Lucy, giving her a brief nod before returning to his call. Lucy noticed that, despite his serious look, he was undeniably attractive, with the kind of confidence that comes naturally to men born into wealth. "Miss Mitchell," Khalil called out after hanging up. "Come with me. We have a meeting with Saudi investors in 20 minutes. "Now? I thought there would be some kind of orientation first." "This is your orientation," he said, already walking toward the elevator. "Stay close, translate precisely, and don't speak unless asked." In the elevator, he studied her critically. "Your suit looks much better than the stained blouse from yesterday." "Thank you, I guess." It wasn't a compliment, just an observation. He checked his luxury watch. First lesson: in international business, appearance is just as important as substance. "With all due respect, Mr. Al-Rashid, I was hired for my language skills, not my fashion sense." He looked at her, seeming briefly surprised by her directness. "Interesting. My previous translators never questioned me." "And where are they now?" Lucy asked, raising an eyebrow. A hint of a smile appeared. "Excellent point." The meeting was intense. The Saudi investors were traditionalists and at first seemed uncomfortable with Lucy's presence. Sensing this, Khalil introduced her with a level of respect that surprised her. "Miss Mitchell is a respected academic from Columbia, fluent in 7 Arabic dialects and a specialist in classical Middle Eastern literature." Lucy had to work hard not to look shocked by the exaggeration. For 2 hours, she translated complex negotiations with perfect accuracy. When one of the investors made a demeaning comment about women in business in Arabic, assuming she wouldn't understand the regional dialect, Lucy translated it word for word. Keeping a neutral expression, Khalil responded with a sharp remark that made the Saudi man pale and apologize. On the way back to the office, Lucy braced herself for a scolding for possibly upsetting the deal, but Khalil actually seemed almost pleased. "You have a photographic memory," he noted. "Excuse me?" "You translated every number, every technical term perfectly, without notes." Lucy shrugged. "I've always had a knack for languages and numbers." He stared out the car window for a moment. "Do you have plans for tonight?" Yes, she answered, surprised by the question. "Why?" "Cancel them. We have dinner with our lawyers at 8. Lucy felt a stab of irritation. "Mr. Al-Rashid, with all due respect, it's almost 6 in the evening. I have personal commitments, which are now secondary to your professional obligations," he said without emotion. "The contract you signed requires full availability." Lucy bit her tongue, reminding herself how badly she needed this job. "Understood," she said. When they arrived at the office, she called Zoe to cancel their study plans. "This is ridiculous," she complained over the phone. "He expects me to completely give up my personal life." "Well, at least he's good-looking, right?" Zoe teased. "That's irrelevant," Lucy answered quickly, maybe too quickly. Oh, so he is good-looking. Interesting. Stop it, he's my boss, extremely demanding, and probably some emotionless robot programmed to talk only about business. Just then, Lucy looked up and saw Khalil standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. "I have to go," she whispered, wondering how much he had heard. "The lawyers arrived early," he said, showing no sign he had overheard anything. "Let's go." During dinner, Lucy noticed how Khalil subtly changed. With the lawyers, he displayed a polished charm that he never directed toward her. From time to time, she caught him watching her, as if assessing her performance. By the third glass of expensive wine, Lucy felt herself relax a little. When the conversation shifted to literature, she surprised everyone with her knowledge of classical Arabic poetry, reciting verses that even Khalil seemed impressed to recognize. "Where did you learn that?" he asked during a break, while the lawyers were deep in discussion. "My grandfather was a professor of comparative literature," she said. "He taught me Arabic when I was a child." "Your last name doesn't sound Arabic." "It's not. My maternal grandfather was Lebanese. Mitchell comes from my father's side." Khalil nodded, seeming to file that information away. "Interesting. You're full of surprises, Miss Mitchell." By the end of the night, when the driver dropped her off at her Brooklyn apartment, Lucy was exhausted but oddly energized. The job would be demanding, her boss impossible, but for the first time in a long while, she felt intellectually alive. She didn't notice the black car that stayed parked after she went inside, nor the man inside taking detailed notes about the building where she lived. 3 weeks later, Lucy had adapted to the frantic pace of working for Khalil. Her days started at 6 in the morning and often ended after midnight. She missed 2 deadlines for her thesis, drifted away from her friends, and practically lived at the office. "You're giving up your life for this job," Zoe said during a rare lunch together. "I haven't seen you in days." "The salary makes it worth it," Lucy replied, checking her phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "And it's temporary, once I pay off my student loans." "If you survive that long, you look exhausted." Lucy couldn't deny it. Yet there was something strangely addictive about working with Khalil. He was brilliant, relentlessly efficient, and occasionally, when he thought no one was watching, almost human. Just last week, she had seen him tip an elderly janitor generously and then look genuinely uncomfortable when the man thanked him tearfully. Another time, she caught him laughing at something on his phone, only to snap back into his serious expression when he realized she was there. "Earth to Lucy." Zoe snapped her fingers. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" "About work," Lucy corrected her. "Sure." Zoe grinned mischievously. "Work that just so happens to involve an absurdly handsome billionaire." "He's my boss, Zoe." "So what? That man seriously needs someone to make him smile. And you, my workaholic friend, need someone to drag you out of that office." Lucy's phone rang. It was Hassan. "Miss Mitchell, sorry to interrupt your lunch, but Mr. Al-Rashid requests your presence immediately. The jet is being prepared." "Jet? Where to?" "Dubai. Departure in 3 hours." Lucy looked at Zoe apologetically. "I have to go. Apparently I'm heading to Dubai." "See? That's exactly what I'm talking about." Zoe threw her hands in the air. "At least promise me you'll do some luxury shopping in Dubai." "I'll be working, not sightseeing," Lucy said, already gathering her things. 2 hours later, she was on her way to the airport with a hastily packed small suitcase, trying to calm her nerves. She had never flown on a private jet before, let alone traveled internationally on such short notice. Khalil was already on board when she arrived, dressed in a flawless suit despite the 14-hour flight ahead. "Your first time on a private jet?" he asked, noticing her look of amazement. "That obvious? You're looking around like a kid in a candy store." Lucy blushed slightly. "It's impressive." "It's practical," he replied, turning his attention back to the documents in front of him. "We have work to do during the flight. I need you to translate these contracts and memorize the key terms for our meetings." The next few hours were a blur of work. Eventually, when Lucy could barely keep her eyes open, Khalil finally closed his laptop. "Get some rest," he ordered. "We need to be sharp when we land." "You should take your own advice," she said, noticing the shadows under his eyes. "When was the last time you slept?" He looked a little surprised at her concern. "Sleep is a luxury when you're building an empire." "Even emperors need sleep," she murmured, already drifting off in the comfortable seat. Hours later, Lucy woke up disoriented to find a blanket carefully draped over her. Khalil was asleep in the seat across from her, his face looking surprisingly younger and less stern in sleep. For a moment, she allowed herself to study him. Without his usual intensity, he seemed almost gentle. She quickly pushed the thought away. The jet began its descent into Dubai. Lucy looked out the window, amazed at the bright city rising from the desert like a futuristic mirage. "First time in Dubai too, I assume?" Khalil's voice startled her. "It's stunning," she answered honestly. "Wait until you see it up close," he said, and for a moment, he actually seemed excited to show her the city. "We'll meet with investors tomorrow. Tonight, there's a charity event we need to attend." "I didn't bring anything for an event," Lucy protested. "I've already taken care of that," he said casually. "A stylist will meet you at the hotel." "Do you always plan everything this far ahead?" she asked, impressed and slightly annoyed by his efficiency. A rare smile crossed his lips. "Always." What Lucy didn't know was that her past was about to crash into her present, in a way that even Khalil al-Rashid, with all his careful planning, couldn't have predicted. The hotel in Dubai was the epitome of lavish luxury, with a presidential suite reserved for Khalil and an adjoining room for Lucy. A stylist was waiting with a selection of evening gowns that probably cost more than her annual rent. "Mr. al-Rashid specifically requested these options," the stylist explained, showing dresses in shades of green and blue. "He mentioned they would match your eyes." Lucy felt a strange warmth rise to her cheeks. He had noticed the color of her eyes. She chose a more conservative emerald green dress, though it was still stunning. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, after her professional hair and makeup, she hardly recognized the sophisticated woman staring back. Khalil was waiting in the lobby, speaking quickly into his phone in Arabic. When he turned and saw her, he paused mid-sentence, his eyes briefly widening before he pulled himself together. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone before hanging up. "Miss Mitchell, you look appropriate for the event." Lucy laughed. "That's probably the most anticlimactic compliment I've ever received." A slight blush touched his face, something she had never seen before. "I meant you look stunning," he corrected himself, seeming just as surprised by his own words. In the car on the way to the event, Khalil explained the importance of the charity gala. "Many of the investors we're meeting tomorrow will be there. Tonight is as much social as it is strategic." "And what exactly is my role?" "Just translation?" "Tonight, you're my companion," he said, looking out the window. "Your companion?" she repeated, raising her eyebrows. In Middle Eastern business culture, showing up alone at social events can be seen as a sign of weakness or instability. "So I'm just a prop," Lucy said, irritated. Khalil turned to face her. "You're a talented academic who speaks fluent Arabic and understands cultural nuances. That hardly makes you a prop." The event was dazzling, held in a converted palace overlooking the Persian Gulf. Lucy felt nervous, but Khalil's confident presence beside her was oddly reassuring. He introduced her to businessmen and politicians with a level of respect that surprised her again. "Miss Mitchell is my language and cultural consultant. Her academic work on modern Arabic literature is groundbreaking." After several introductions, she whispered, "You really need to stop exaggerating my credentials. I haven't even finished my master's yet." "I'm not exaggerating," he replied. "I read your preliminary thesis. Hassan got it from your advisor." Lucy stopped in her tracks. "You what? That's a violation of privacy. It's due diligence. I only hire the best." He took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and offered it to her. "Your work on how modern Arabic poetry reflects political change is genuinely impressive." Before Lucy could fully process the fact that her boss had apparently done deep research into her academic work, they were interrupted by an older man with a warm smile. "Khalil, my boy." The man hugged Khalil warmly, something Lucy never would have imagined anyone doing. "Uncle Farid," Khalil responded, true affection in his voice. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight." "I always support a good cause," Farid said before turning his attention to Lucy. "And who is this charming young lady?" "Lucy Mitchell, my translator and cultural consultant," Khalil introduced. "Lucy, this is Farid al-Zahawi, my mentor and an uncle by affection." The older man's eyes widened slightly when he heard her name, but he quickly recovered. "Mitchell? A pleasure to meet you, my dear. As they spoke, Lucy noticed Farid studying her carefully, as if trying to solve a puzzle. He asked her questions about her family, especially her grandfather, which she answered politely but with growing confusion. Later, after Khalil was pulled into a conversation with some investors, Farid approached her again. Tell me, young Lucy, was your maternal grandfather named Ibrahim? Lucy was surprised. Yes, Ibrahim Nassar. Did you know him? The older man smiled enigmatically. The world is smaller than we sometimes realize. Your grandfather was a great man. Before she could ask more, Farid was called away by other guests, leaving Lucy intrigued. The rest of the evening was a whirlwind of conversations in both English and Arabic. Lucy watched Khalil navigate the event with a grace he never showed at the office. Here, he smiled more easily, laughed at jokes, and sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his gaze drifted toward her. Around midnight, Lucy was exhausted. She found Khalil alone on a secluded balcony, looking out at the sparkling city. Can we leave soon? She asked. I'm practically falling asleep standing up. He turned to her, studying her under the soft light. For a moment, his expression seemed almost vulnerable. Just a few more minutes. There's something I want to show you. He led her to a private rooftop garden, revealing a panoramic view of Dubai. It's breathtaking, Lucy murmured. I've been coming to Dubai for 20 years, and I never get tired of this view. He said quietly, the impossible made real through vision and determination. Lucy studied his profile. Can I ask you something personal? He hesitated, then nodded. Why do you work so hard? You already have more money than you could spend in several lifetimes. Khalil was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. My father built something from nothing, he said finally. When he died, I promised to turn his legacy into something that would last for generations. And that requires giving up any semblance of a personal life? A sad smile crossed his face. Some sacrifices are necessary for extraordinary achievements. And is it worth it? His eyes met hers. That's a question I've been asking myself lately. The moment was broken when Hassan appeared discreetly. Sir, your scheduled call with New York is in 5 minutes. In the car back to the hotel, Lucy sat in thoughtful silence. Something between them had shifted that night, a subtle barrier falling away. When they arrived, Khalil walked her to her room door. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be intense. Thank you for tonight, she said. It was unexpectedly nice. A brief smile lit his face. Good night, Lucy. It was the first time he had used her first name, and the sound of it sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. As she got ready for bed, Lucy couldn't stop thinking about the strange meeting with Farid and how he seemed to know her grandfather. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. What she didn't know was that, in the room next door, Khalil was on the phone with Farid, deeply engaged in a conversation about Lucy Mitchell's past and a secret that had been buried for decades. The next day's meetings were a test of endurance. 8 straight hours of intense negotiations with investors, with Lucy translating non-stop between English and 3 different Arabic dialects. Khalil was in his element, commanding the room with quiet authority. At the end of the day, when they finally returned to the hotel, Lucy was mentally and physically exhausted. Her head was pounding from the effort of staying focused for so long. You were outstanding today, Khalil said, surprising her as they stepped into the elevator. Thank you, she replied, rubbing her temples. But I think my brain is officially fried. Headache? She nodded. Khalil pressed the button for her floor, then, surprisingly, also pressed the button for the penthouse. Where are we going? She asked. You need fresh air and some quiet, he answered simply. The penthouse had a private infinity pool overlooking the city. The sun was setting, bathing everything in a golden glow. There was no one else around. How did you? Lucy started to ask. I reserved it for private use, Khalil explained, loosening his tie. Sit down. He guided her to a luxurious lounge chair and, to her surprise, placed his fingers on her temples, applying gentle circular pressure. What are you doing? She asked, tense. A pain relief technique I learned from my mother, he said, continuing the movements. She was a doctor. Slowly, Lucy began to relax under his touch. You never talk about your family. There's rarely an opportunity for personal conversations at work. And this isn't work? He paused, his fingers still on her temples. I suppose it isn't. For a few minutes, they stayed in a comfortable silence while he continued the massage. Lucy's headache started to ease. "My mother died when I was 12, Khalil said suddenly. "Cancer. My father was devastated but threw himself into work. I guess I learned that from him." Lucy opened her eyes, surprised by the personal revelation. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, trying to seem indifferent, but Lucy caught the vulnerability behind the gesture. It was a long time ago. Still, losing someone we love leaves its mark. Khalil pulled away, slipping back into his professional demeanor. "Feeling better?" "Much, thank you. We'll have dinner in an hour. Uncle Farid will be joining us." Lucy sat up straighter. "He seemed to know my grandfather. Isn't that a little strange?" A brief flicker of something crossed Khalil's face. The international business world is small. Coincidences happen. But something in his tone suggested it wasn't just coincidence. Dinner took place at an exclusive restaurant on top of a skyscraper. Farid was already waiting when they arrived, standing to hug Khalil and kiss Lucy's hands. "My dear," the elderly man said warmly, "I'm so happy you could join us." The conversation flowed easily, with Farid telling stories about young Khalil that made him seem surprisingly human. "He was such a serious boy," Farid laughed. "Always reading, always planning. When he was 10, he presented me with a full business plan to expand my little taxi fleet." "And it was a good plan," Khalil defended himself with a rare smile. "An excellent plan. That's why I used it," Farid agreed. "The boy was born for business." He turned to Lucy. "And you, my dear? What drew you to the world of languages and literature?" "My grandfather," she answered. "He was a professor and taught me to love words." "Ibrahim Nassar," Farid said thoughtfully. "A remarkable man." Lucy leaned forward. "You really knew him, didn't you?" "How?" Farid glanced at Khalil, who subtly shook his head. The elderly man smiled evasively. "Academic circles, many years ago." The answer didn't satisfy her, but before she could press further, Khalil skillfully changed the subject. After dinner, when Farid said goodbye, he held Lucy's hands for a long moment. "You have his eyes," he said softly, "the same eyes that see beyond appearances." On the way back to the hotel, Lucy was thoughtful. "Your uncle is hiding something about my grandfather." Khalil kept his eyes on the passing scenery. "Farid enjoys a bit of mystery. Don't take it too seriously." "It's more than that," she insisted. "The way he reacted to my name, the specific questions. He knew my grandfather well." Khalil didn't respond, but Lucy noticed his jaw tightening. When they arrived at the hotel, he walked her to her room again. "We're heading back to New York tomorrow," he said. "The jet leaves at 10. "Khalil," she called out as he turned to leave, the first time she had used his first name. "Is there something you're not telling me?" "Let's have a little fun with those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who read all the way here will understand. Now let's get back to the story." He stopped, his back to her, shoulders stiff under his perfectly tailored suit. For a moment it seemed like he might open up. Then the moment passed. "Good night, Lucy," he said simply, before walking down the hall to his own suite. That night, Lucy dreamed of her grandfather. In the dream, he was sitting in his familiar office in Boston, surrounded by old books, telling her stories in Arabic about a friendship between two young businessmen whose paths separated because of a betrayal. She woke up with an unsettling feeling that there was something important she needed to know, but it remained just out of reach. Back in New York, the intense work routine started again, but something had changed. Khalil was more distant than before, avoiding being alone with Lucy whenever he could, and assigning tasks through San instead of speaking to her directly. After a week of this behavior, Lucy was frustrated. During a particularly difficult translation of some legal documents, she finally confronted him in his office. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked directly, closing the door behind her. Khalil looked surprised. "No." "Why do you ask?" "You've barely spoken to me since Dubai. If I said or did something wrong—" "It's nothing you did," he interrupted, running a hand through his hair in a rare sign of nervousness. "I have personal matters to sort out." "Does it have to do with my grandfather and your uncle Farid?" The direct question clearly caught him off guard. "Why do you think that?" "I'm not just a translator, Mr. Al-Rashid. I'm also good at reading people." Something changed after that dinner. Khalil stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Some stories aren't mine to tell. If it's about my family, I have the right to know. He turned to face her, his expression full of inner conflict. I need more time. Please trust me when I say you'll know everything when the time is right. Lucy wanted to push further, but something in his face stopped her. All right, but don't avoid me. It's painful. Her admission seemed to hit him. I never meant to hurt you. You are? He hesitated, as if carefully choosing his words. A valuable colleague. Lucy laughed without humor. Valuable colleague, you really know how to make a girl feel special. A slight smile appeared on his lips. You know what I mean? Actually, I don't. Sometimes I feel like we're getting closer, that there's something more than just work between us, and then you put up that wall again. Khalil was silent for a long moment. I have a trip to Boston next week, he said finally. I'd like you to come with me. The sudden change of subject surprised her. Boston? Why? Business first, but also because there's someone there you should meet. Who? An old partner of your grandfather. Lucy's heart sped up. You've been looking into my grandfather? Looking into is a strong word. Let's just say I've been trying to better understand some historical connections. Lucy crossed her arms. That's incredibly intrusive, you know? Yes, he admitted with surprising honesty. But necessary. Will you come? How could I refuse such a charmingly mysterious offer? She replied sarcastically. The next morning, Lucy found an envelope on her desk. Inside was an old black and white photo of two young men smiling in front of a small office. She was shocked to recognize her grandfather as one of them. The other man looked remarkably like a younger version of Farid. On the back of the photo, written in Arabic, it said, Ibrahim and Farid, Nassar and Al-Zahawi Imports, 1958. There was no note, no explanation. When she looked for Khalil, Hassan told her he was in meetings outside the office all day. Lucy spent the next week caught between intense work and researching the mysterious connection between her grandfather and Khalil's family. Her efforts didn't lead to much. Her grandfather rarely spoke about his life before settling as a professor in Boston, and her mother only knew he had worked in imports before his academic career. On the night before the trip to Boston, Lucy was working late when Khalil appeared at her door. He looked tired, his sleeves rolled up and his tie loose, a rare sight for someone usually so polished. You should go home and get some rest, he said. We leave early tomorrow. Says the workaholic, she replied, organizing her notes. He walked into the office and sat down in the chair across from her desk. Thank you for the photo. You left it for me? He nodded. I found it in Farid's files. Why didn't you tell me about their connection? Because it's complicated. He rubbed his face. Lucy, there's a shared history between our families that I only recently discovered. It's delicate. Something in his expression alarmed her. Is it something bad? Did my grandfather do something wrong? No, he answered quickly. Ibrahim Nassar was an honorable man. It's more a matter of lost legacies. I promise it will all make sense in Boston. He stood up to leave but stopped at the door. Lucy? Yes? I'm sorry for being distant. It's not. He struggled for words, which was unusual for someone usually so well-spoken. It's not you. The truth is, the problem is how much I enjoy being around you. Before she could fully process this almost confession, he was gone, leaving her with even more questions than before. Boston in the fall was spectacular, with trees painting the landscapes in shades of red and gold. Khalil's jet landed on a crisp Thursday morning, the air carrying the first hint of winter. It's strange to be back, Lucy said as the car drove them from the airport. I spent my childhood visiting my grandfather here. Where did he live? Khalil asked, seeming genuinely interested. Cambridge, near Harvard. He had an old house full of books and Middle Eastern artifacts. She smiled at the memory. The smell of old books and cardamom tea. Khalil watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You loved him very much. He taught me everything I know about languages, about respecting different cultures. After my parents died in a car accident when I was 8, he was my safe harbor until he passed away 5 years ago. Khalil looked surprised. I didn't know about your parents. I'm sorry. Lucy shrugged, a gesture that didn't show the pain she still carried. It was a long time ago, as you would say. Still, losing someone you love leaves marks, he said, echoing his own words from Dubai. They shared a look of mutual understanding that said more than any conversation could. The car dropped them off at a luxury hotel in Beacon Hill. Khalil's business meeting was scheduled for the afternoon, leaving the morning free. "Would you like to visit some of the places from your childhood?" he asked during breakfast. The offer caught her off guard. "Really? I thought you'd be all business." "Even emperors take a break sometimes," he said, referencing her comment on the flight to Dubai. So they spent the morning as tourists. Lucy took him to Harvard Yard, where her grandfather used to teach, and then to a small Arabic bookstore where she spent hours browsing while he chatted with other scholars. To her surprise, Khalil seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about her memories and listening carefully to her stories. Away from the corporate world, he was almost charming. He laughed more easily, and the sharp intensity in his eyes softened into something warmer. At a small cafe she used to visit with her grandfather, Khalil ordered a traditional Arabic coffee. "Did your grandfather come here often?" he asked. "Every Sunday." Lucy smiled nostalgically. He knew the original owner, who was also a Lebanese immigrant. As if summoned by her words, an elderly man approached their table. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you Ibrahim's granddaughter?" Lucy looked up, surprised. "Yes, I'm Lucy." The man's face lit up. "Little Lucy, I can't believe it. The last time I saw you, you barely reached my waist." He turned to Khalil. "And you must be Farid's son. The resemblance is remarkable." Khalil looked just as surprised as Lucy. "No, sir. I'm Khalil al-Rashid. Farid is my uncle by affection." "Ah," the man nodded. "Al-Rashid, of course. Well, it's a pleasure to see descendants of great families together again." "Great families?" Lucy asked. "Nasser and al-Zahawi, the pioneers." The man spread his arms wide. "Without them, many of us would never have come to America." After the man left, Lucy turned to Khalil. "I think it's time for some answers." Khalil checked his watch. "Our meeting is in an hour. I promise everything will be explained." "No more mysteries, Khalil. I'm tired of riddles." "Just trust me a little longer," he said, his eyes pleading. The business meeting was at an elegant house in Louisburg Square. When they arrived, a butler led them to a library that looked like it came straight out of a classic novel. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather armchairs, and a crackling fireplace, despite the mild day. Inside, Farid al-Zahawi was waiting, standing to greet them. "You didn't say your uncle would be here," Lucy whispered to Khalil. "Because he is the meeting," Khalil replied quietly. Farid embraced Lucy warmly. "My dear, thank you for coming. I know you must be confused, but I promise everything will make sense." He invited them to sit and then moved to a large painting over the fireplace. Lucy gasped when she recognized her grandfather, much younger, standing beside Farid. "This house," Farid began, "is where it all started. The original headquarters of Nasser and al-Zahawi Imports, founded in 1958 by two young immigrants, your grandfather and me." "My grandfather never mentioned a business," Lucy said, stunned. "For reasons you'll soon understand." Farid sat down heavily, suddenly looking every bit his age. "Ibrahim and I were like brothers. We fled Lebanon during turbulent political times and arrived in America with nothing but ambition and a few family connections." He went on to tell how they built a successful business importing goods from the Middle East, paving the way for other immigrants and becoming respected figures in the Arab-American community. "Everything was going well until 1963, Farid continued, his voice weakening. "We had a disagreement about the direction of the business. I wanted to expand into oil. Your grandfather wanted to stick to traditional imports. Words were exchanged. Accusations were made." "A business argument tore you apart?" Lucy asked, incredulous. "If only it had been just that," Farid sighed. "The real reason was more personal. I had fallen in love with Ibrahim's sister, your great-aunt Amira." Lucy frowned. "I don't have a great-aunt Amira. Because she died young, before you were born. A rare heart condition." Farid's eyes grew misty. "Ibrahim blamed me for the stress he believed worsened her illness. After she passed, our friendship couldn't be mended. He sold me his share of the business and moved into academia." "And what happened to the company?" Lucy asked. Farid looked over at Khalil. "Eventually, it came under the care of the al-Rashid family. Khalil's father married my niece and took over when I retired." Lucy turned to Khalil, starting to understand. "So Al-Rashid International. Started as Nassar and Al-Zahawi Imports, Khalil confirmed. Half of the original business belonged to your grandfather. Lucy felt dizzy at the revelation. Why am I only learning this now? Your grandfather never told your family? Farid asked. Never. He rarely spoke about his life before academia. Farid nodded sadly. The pain must have been too deep. I spent decades trying to find him, hoping to reconcile, but he didn't want to be found. The elderly man stood and walked over to an old desk, pulling out a leather folder. Recently, I found this among some old papers. It's the original agreement Ibrahim and I drafted when we founded the business. Legally, it means nothing now, but morally. He handed the folder to Lucy. Inside was a yellowed document in her grandfather's handwriting. The agreement stated that the company would always belong to both families, profits shared equally, Farid explained. When I learned you were Ibrahim's granddaughter, I asked Khalil to find you. Lucy looked at Khalil, who avoided her gaze. So all this time, you hired me because I'm Ibrahim Nassar's granddaughter? Not because of my skills? At first, yes, Khalil admitted. I needed to confirm your identity before deciding how to proceed, but it quickly became clear that your talent is real. Lucy felt a wave of anger. So I was part of some elaborate plan? A pawn in a corporate repair scheme? It's not like that, Khalil protested. Yes, there was an initial hidden motive, but... But what? She interrupted, standing up. You deliberately kept crucial information about my family from me while digging into my past. You manipulated me. Lucy, please, Farid said, stepping in. The fault is mine. I asked Khalil to proceed cautiously. We had to be sure before stirring up old history. Sure of what? She asked, her voice shaking. That you truly were Ibrahim's heir. Farid answered, and if you would be worthy of the legacy he left behind. Worthy? Lucy laughed bitterly. And who are you to decide that? Lucy, Khalil said, stepping toward her. I never meant to hurt you. What started as a family duty turned into something entirely different for me. And what's that? He hesitated, words failing him again. That's what I thought, she said coldly, grabbing her bag. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. She left quickly, ignoring their calls after her. On the streets of Boston, a city she once called home, Lucy had never felt so lost. Lucy wandered aimlessly for hours, trying to process everything she had learned. The unexpected connection to Al-Rashid International, her grandfather's hidden past, and the feeling of having been used by Khalil. Eventually, she found herself in Cambridge, standing in front of her grandfather's old house, now occupied by another family. She sat on a bench across the street, staring at the home where she had spent so many summers. I figured I might find you here. She didn't need to look to know it was Khalil. How did you find me? It wasn't hard to guess you'd seek out somewhere familiar. He sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. Can I explain? What is there to explain? You hired me under false pretenses. Yes and no. He took a deep breath. When Farid told me about your connection to Ibrahim Nassar, I originally planned just to verify it and maybe offer some financial compensation for your grandfather's original share in the business. It was purely a business matter. And when did that change? The moment you spilled coffee on your blouse and still corrected me about classical Arabic poetry during your interview. A small smile appeared on his lips. You were different from anyone I had ever met. Brilliant, genuine, fearless. Lucy finally looked at him. Why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning? Honestly? I was afraid of losing you. He met her gaze. First as a translator, then in other ways. And yet you kept investigating. And every discovery made me admire you more, he confessed. Your dedication to your studies despite financial struggles, how you cared for your grandfather during his final years, your volunteer work teaching English to refugees. Lucy, the more I learned about you, the more I... He paused, clearly uncomfortable with his vulnerability. More you what? She pressed. The more I cared, he finished simply. In a way I had never experienced before. Lucy wanted to hold on to her anger, but it was fading in the face of his unusual sincerity. What does Farid want from me now? She asked. Recognition. Redemption, maybe. Khalil shrugged. He's old and regrets the mistakes of the past. Seeing you brings back the friend he lost. And you? What do you want? He hesitated, then answered with surprising honesty. At first, I wanted to protect the company and the family's reputation. Now, I just want to earn your trust back. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the house. My grandfather never mentioned any of this, Lucy finally said. Not the company, not Farid, not a sister named Amira. Why hide so much? Sometimes people bury painful parts of their past so deeply they convince themselves it never happened, Khalil replied. I believe your grandfather wanted to protect his family from the hurt he experienced. Lucy thought about his words. He always said the past should inform the present, not control it. A wise man, Khalil commented. If I go back with you to talk to Farid, it doesn't mean I've fully forgiven how everything happened, she clarified. Understandable. And I don't know what to think about this whole inheritance story. No one's asking you to make any decisions now, he assured her. Just listen to what Farid has to say. After that, what you choose to do with the information is completely up to you. Lucy slowly nodded. All right? When they stood up to leave, Khalil hesitantly offered his hand. After a moment of hesitation, Lucy accepted it. Back at Farid's house, the old man seemed to have aged years in just a few hours. His face lit up when he saw them return together. Lucy, my dear, I thought I had lost the chance to fully explain. She sat down, more composed now. I'm listening. Farid told the whole story. How he and Ibrahim had been inseparable in their youth, how they built the business together, and how the love for Amira complicated everything. The business dispute was just a symptom of deeper tensions. When Amira died, guilt consumed me, Farid admitted. Ibrahim was right. The stress from our conflict worsened her condition. But at the time, I was too proud to admit my mistake. He explained how he secretly transferred funds to Ibrahim's account over the years, making sure he had financial stability even though he refused contact. He never accepted it, Lucy asked. He never knew. The funds were sent through lawyers as restitution for the profits that should have been his. I believe he used some of that money to fund your education. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Lucy had always wondered how her modest grandfather could afford private school for her. Why reveal all of this now? Farid exchanged a look with Khalil. I'm old, Lucy. I have no children. Recently, I made some changes in my affairs. I wanted to correct this historical wrong while I still can. What kind of changes? I transferred 20% of my shares in Al Rashid International to your name. Lucy gasped. What? It's about the share that would have grown from your grandfather's original stake if he had stayed with the company, Farid explained. It's not charity. It's long overdue justice. I can't accept this, Lucy protested. It's too much. It's already done, Farid said gently. The papers just need your signature to finalize. Lucy looked at Khalil. Did you know about this? I found out yesterday, he replied. It was Farid's decision. And you're okay with that? She asked hesitantly. The company is still thriving. Besides, a small smile appeared on his face. Now I'll have a professional reason to keep you close. Lucy didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The revelation was overwhelming. I need some time to process all of this. Of course, my dear, Farid agreed. Take all the time you need. When they left the house, it was already nighttime. Khalil walked with her silently back to the hotel. At her room door, he stopped. Lucy, no matter what you decide about the shares or your future with the company, I hope we can find a way forward. Together. She studied his face, seeing genuine vulnerability where there had once been only relentless confidence. I don't know what to say, Khalil. Don't say anything now, he replied. Just think about it. For the first time since she had met him, he seemed completely unsure, almost fragile. On impulse, Lucy stepped forward and kissed his cheek. Good night, Khalil. A surprising blush colored his usually composed face. Good night, Lucy. In her room, Lucy lay awake for hours, thinking about how her life had completely changed in a single day. She was upset at being manipulated, touched by Farid's story of reconciliation, and completely confused about her feelings for Khalil. When she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of her grandfather again, this time smiling and nodding as if approving a path she still couldn't clearly see. A month had passed since the revelation in Boston. Lucy had returned to New York with more questions than answers, keeping a professional distance from Khalil while she processed everything she had learned. She threw herself into research about her grandfather, digging through old boxes of documents she had kept after his death. In a yellowed envelope at the bottom of a box, she found something revealing. An old photo similar to the one Khalil had shown her, but in this one, Ibrahim and Farid were joined by a young, beautiful woman. On the back, written in faded Arabic, it read, "Farid, Ibrahim, and Amira, our first office, 1959. So it was true, Lucy murmured to herself. That same week, she requested a 2-week leave from work, sending the request by email instead of speaking to Khalil in person. The reply came from Hassan, approving her request without any questions. During her time away, she visited the Boston Public Library and Harvard University archives, where her grandfather had taught. She found mentions of Nasser and al-Zahawi imports in old newspapers, confirming Farid's story. In a 1962 article, her grandfather and Farid were celebrated as successful pioneers in the Arab American community. On the last day of her leave, Lucy got an unexpected call from Zoe. "Guess who showed up at my cafe today looking like a lost puppy?" "I have no idea," Lucy replied, though she had a pretty good guess. "Your millionaire boss," Zoe continued. "He looked different, less intimidating, more human. He asked where you were." "And what did you tell him?" "I said you were doing what you always do when you're confused, researching like an obsessed scholar." Lucy sighed. "And what did he say?" "He asked if I thought you would come back." Zoe paused. "Lucy, whatever happened between you two, that man is hurting. He gave me his card and said if I talked to you, to tell you he would be waiting when you're ready to talk." Lucy fiddled with the edge of an old book on Arab immigration to the U.S. that she had found. "It's complicated, Zoe." "Life usually is, but it's not often we see billionaire CEOs looking miserable, begging for scraps of news about their employees." Zoe laughed. "He loves you, you know?" "He doesn't even really know me," Lucy protested weakly. "Maybe, but he wants to. Isn't that worth something?" After hanging up, Lucy made a decision. It was time to face not only Khalil, but also her own past and future. When she returned to the office the following Monday, the atmosphere felt strangely tense. Staff cast curious glances her way as she walked to her office. Hassan greeted her with a cautious nod. "Is he in?" she asked simply. "In a teleconference. Ends in about 10 minutes. Lucy nodded and went to her own office, finding everything exactly as she had left it, except for a single red rose in a simple vase on her desk without a card. Exactly 12 minutes later, her door opened and Khalil walked in, looking both relieved and nervous to see her. "You came back," he said, as if he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. "I have a contract," she replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Lucy," he took a hesitant step toward her. "I found this," she interrupted, handing him the photo she had discovered. It was true, everything Farid said. Khalil studied the photo, his eyes softening. "You've been doing some research." "I always do my homework." She took a deep breath. "I spoke with a distant cousin in Boston, the daughter of one of my grandfather's cousins. She vaguely remembered stories about a sister of his who died young. The family hardly spoke of her because the pain was too great." "And what else did you find out?" "That my grandfather was a man who carried pain and regret with him until the end, just like Farid." She looked directly at Khalil. "And that I don't want to live that way." Something like hope lit up his eyes. "What does that mean for you now?" "It means I'm considering Farid's offer, but on my own terms." She straightened her shoulders. "I want to establish a foundation in my grandfather's and Amira's name to support immigrant students, and I want a significant portion of the stock profits to go toward it." Khalil nodded, looking impressed. "And what about your role in the company?" "I haven't decided yet, but I know I don't want it to be just a passive shareholder." She paused. "And I know that our dynamic has changed permanently. For better or worse?" he asked softly. "That depends." "Depends on?" Lucy stood up, closing the distance between them. "On you being honest with me about something." "Anything," he answered without hesitation. "Why did you really hire me? Not the official reason, not the story about verifying my identity, the real reason." Khalil looked uncomfortable with the direct question but didn't look away. "The truth? I saw your photo even before I met you. Hassan had put together a dossier, and there was a picture of you at your college graduation. You were laughing, your hair blowing in the wind. So what?" she pressed when he hesitated. "So alive?" he finished simply. "So different from anyone in my world. I wanted to meet you right away." The translation work was a convenient excuse. Lucy hadn't expected that answer. Are you telling me you hired me because you liked my picture? A surprising blush colored his face. It sounds ridiculous when you put it that way. It's completely ridiculous, she agreed, struggling not to smile, and slightly unsettling. In my defense, your qualifications were flawless, he added quickly. It wouldn't have worked if you weren't exceptionally talented. So you admit the translation work was secondary? I admit I broke all my rules when it came to you, Lucy Mitchell. His voice grew serious. And I'll keep breaking them if you'll give me the chance. The moment was interrupted by Lucy's phone ringing on the table. Reluctantly, she answered. Miss Mitchell? Fareed Al-Zahawi is on line 1 for you, the receptionist said. Lucy glanced at Khalil, who looked just as surprised. I'll take it, she replied. Fareed's voice came through the line, sounding upbeat. Lucy, my dear, I hope I'm not interrupting. Actually, she began, looking at Khalil, I'm in the middle of something important. Excellent. Then Khalil is with you. Please put me on speakerphone. She pressed the button, raising an eyebrow at Khalil. I have wonderful news, Fareed announced. I found more documents from your grandfather, letters he wrote to Amira mentioning plans for the company's future. And there's something else. Something you both need to see in person. What is it? Khalil asked. Not over the phone, Fareed insisted. Come to Dubai next week. I'm staying at my home there. It's important for both families. After the call ended, Lucy and Khalil looked at each other. Do you think it's genuine, or just another one of his elaborate plans? She asked. With Fareed, you never really know, Khalil replied, but he did sound genuinely excited. Lucy toyed with the pen on her desk, considering. I think I'm curious enough to find out. So you'll come to Dubai? With conditions, she said, raising a finger. First, it's not a business trip. I want time to properly explore the city. That can be easily arranged. Second, we'll stay in separate hotels. Khalil frowned. Why? Because, Lucy hesitated, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Because I'm trying to keep a clear head around you, and it's getting harder. A slow smile spread across his face. That's the most promising thing you've ever said to me. Don't get too excited, she warned, though a blush was forming on her cheeks. I'm still processing all of this. I completely understand, he said, although his smile suggested otherwise. Separate hotels? Any other conditions? Lucy thought for a moment. Yes, I want you to tell me more about yourself. The real you, not just the relentless CEO. That might be disappointing, he warned. The ruthless CEO is the most interesting part. Let me be the judge of that, she replied. For a moment, they just looked at each other, something new and fragile growing between them. Then Khalil reached out his hand. We have a deal, Miss Mitchell. She shook his hand, ignoring the spark that seemed to pass between them every time they touched. We have a deal, Mr. Al-Rashid. As he left her office, Lucy couldn't help but notice that, for the first time since she had met him, Khalil was truly smiling. Not a half smile, or a restrained one, but a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. And despite all her reservations, she found herself smiling too. Dubai was even more dazzling during Lucy's second visit. This time, without the pressure of business meetings, she could truly enjoy the impressive city rising from the desert like a monument to human ambition. Following their agreement, they stayed in separate hotels, although Khalil had made sure they were conveniently close to each other. In the first 48 hours, he kept his promise to properly show her the city. They visited the traditional souks, where Lucy was enchanted by exotic spices and colorful fabrics. At the top of the Burj Khalifa, she was momentarily speechless, taking in the panoramic view. It feels like we're floating above the world, she said in awe. Khalil wasn't watching the view but her expression of wonder. I come here often for business and rarely take a moment to actually appreciate it. That sounds like a metaphor for your whole life, she teased. To her surprise, he didn't argue. You're probably right. During a boat ride along the creek, Lucy noticed how much more relaxed Khalil seemed away from the corporate environment. He had traded his sharp suits for khaki pants and button-down shirts with rolled-up sleeves, revealing surprisingly tanned forearms. Do you really speak 7 languages? She asked unexpectedly, remembering how he had introduced her to the Saudi investors. He looked a little embarrassed. 5 fluently, 2 at a basic level. I might have exaggerated a little. Khalil Al-Rashid exaggerating? I'm shocked, she laughed. I wanted to impress the investors, he defended himself. And you. You didn't need to exaggerate to impress me, she admitted softly. That night, they had dinner at a seaside restaurant where the conversation flowed more easily than ever. Lucy learned that he had a younger sister studying in Europe, that he secretly enjoyed science fiction novels, and that despite his wealth, he felt uncomfortable with displays of luxury. My father was the same way, he explained. He believed true wealth was about building something lasting, not showing it off. He sounds like he was a wise man. He was. Khalil looked down at his glass of water, momentarily lost in memory. I think he would have liked you. Why? Because you're not impressed by money or power, he said, meeting her eyes. You see beyond that. Lucy felt herself blush under his intense gaze. Maybe I just see the man behind the CEO. A comfortable silence settled between them, full of unspoken possibilities. The next day, they visited Farid's mansion on the outskirts of the city. The elderly man welcomed them warmly, although Lucy noticed he looked frailer than he had in Boston. Finally, he exclaimed, leading them into a spacious living room overlooking a lush garden, a miracle in the middle of the desert. I've been eagerly waiting to show you what I found. He presented an old wooden box decorated with intricate carvings. I discovered this in the house I kept in Beirut. It was hidden in a secret compartment of a desk that belonged to your grandfather, Lucy. When he opened the box, he revealed a collection of yellowed papers, letters, documents, and journals, all written in meticulous Arabic. These are your grandfather's personal journals from the years we worked together, Farid explained, handing Lucy a leather-bound notebook. And these are letters he wrote to Amira but never sent after her death. Lucy turned the pages of the journal with reverence, recognizing her grandfather's handwriting. This is priceless. There's more, Farid said, pulling out a large envelope. Your grandfather was a cautious and visionary man. When we founded the company, he insisted on a special agreement, though it was never made official because of our later disagreement. The document was a handwritten will, declaring that no matter what happened, half of the company would always belong to future generations of the Nassar and al-Zahawi families. He wrote this even before we began to argue, Farid said softly. He wanted to make sure our friendship would transcend business and continue through our families, no matter what happened to us. Lucy felt tears forming. He never mentioned any of this. Pain clouded his vision, just like it did mine, Farid replied. We spent decades trapped in hurt when we could have rebuilt. Khalil examined the documents with professional interest. This doesn't have legal weight after so much time, but the sentiment behind it is powerful. That's why I transferred the shares to Lucy, Farid explained, not out of guilt or charity, but to honor the original intention of two young friends who dreamed of building something greater than themselves. The three of them spent hours talking about the past, with Farid sharing stories about Ibrahim that made Lucy laugh and cry by turns. It felt like rediscovering her grandfather through new eyes. While Farid rested for a while, Lucy and Khalil walked through the lush garden. I didn't expect this, she admitted, still holding her grandfather's journal. I thought it was just about money and business. Business is always about people, in the end, Khalil replied. Something I ironically learned by watching you. Lucy stopped by an ornate fountain. What are we going to do with all of this? With this legacy? What do you want to do? She thought for a moment. I want to honor it, not just by accepting the shares, but by using them to create something meaningful. The foundation I mentioned for immigrant students would be a good start. It could be integrated into the corporate structure of Al Rashid International, Khalil suggested. With you overseeing it? Are you offering me a job, Mr. Al Rashid? I'm offering you a partnership, he corrected. Both personal and professional. Lucy's heart sped up at the meaning behind his words. That's a risky proposal. The best ventures usually are, he said, stepping closer to her. Before she could answer, they were interrupted by Hassan, who appeared in the garden with a worried expression. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem with the European acquisition. Regulators are asking unexpected questions. Khalil frowned. Now? The European markets just opened. We need to respond right away. Lucy saw the immediate change, the relaxed man beside her instantly becoming the focused CEO again. "Go," she said. "We'll continue this conversation later." He hesitated, clearly torn between duty and desire. "Are you sure?" "Your empire needs its emperor," she replied with a small smile. "I'll be fine. I want to spend more time with my grandfather's journals anyway." Reluctantly, Khalil followed Hassan back inside, casting one last look at Lucy before disappearing. As she sat by the fountain, opening the journal to read more, she didn't notice Farid watching her from the veranda, a satisfied smile on his aging face. The corporate crisis kept Khalil busy for the rest of the day and into the night. Lucy returned to her hotel alone, absorbed in her grandfather's writings. In the yellowed pages, she discovered a very different man from the calm professor she had known. A young, ambitious, passionate man, full of hope for the future. One entry in particular caught her attention. "Today, Farid and I signed the papers for our first store. Sometimes I wonder if he knows how much his optimism saved me after I left Lebanon. He sees possibilities where I only see obstacles. Maybe that's what makes a true partnership, when two people together are more than the sum of their individual parts." Lucy fell asleep with the journal open on her chest, dreaming of a past she had never known, and a future that was starting to take shape in her mind. The next morning, she was awakened by a knock at the door. Still sleepy, she opened it to find a messenger with an envelope and a single red rose. The note inside was simple. "Sorry for yesterday's interruption. Breakfast on the beach to make up for it? K." Smiling, she got dressed and went downstairs, finding him waiting in the lobby, looking tired but strangely energized. "Did you solve the crisis?" she asked. "Temporarily," he replied. "Some things are more important than work." "Who are you, and what have you done with Khalil al-Rashid?" He laughed, a sound she was beginning to love. "Maybe he's evolving." Breakfast was served on a private beach, with the Persian Gulf sparkling under the morning sun. Lucy told him about what she had found in the journals, and Khalil listened with genuine interest. "I think I understand now why you're the way you are," she commented. "How am I?" he asked, curious. "Intense, focused, always carrying the weight of invisible expectations." She paused. "Your father built on Farid's work, and you carry the legacy of both." He looked surprised by her insight. "No one's ever noticed that before." "Maybe no one ever paid enough attention," she said. The moment between them grew deeper, full of mutual understanding. This time, when Khalil leaned closer, there were no interruptions. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, completely different from the confident man who commanded boardrooms. Lucy felt herself melt into him, years of unspoken tension finally finding their release. When they pulled apart, she laughed nervously. "Well, this complicates things." "Actually, I think it makes things simpler," he replied, keeping her close. "Lucy Mitchell, you turned my world upside down from the moment you stumbled into my office." "For better or worse?" "Definitely for better." He gently touched her face. "I need to know if you feel the same." Lucy thought about all the reasons she should be cautious. The circumstances of how they met, the difference in their worlds, the challenges of mixing business with personal matters. But when she looked into his eyes, all those objections seemed small. "I think I do," she admitted, "even when you're being unbearably bossy." "Which is about 80% of the time," he joked. 75 at most, she corrected with a smile. "You're improving." They spent the rest of the day together, walking along the beach, talking about possibilities. For the foundation, for the company, and more subtly, for themselves. That evening, they visited Farid again. The elderly man looked absolutely delighted when he noticed their intertwined fingers and the new closeness between them. "Finally," he exclaimed. "I thought I'd have to live another 100 years to see you two figure out the obvious." "And what would that be?" Lucy asked, trying to sound innocent. "That some people are meant to find each other, no matter the circumstances," Farid answered with a knowing smile. "Ibrahim would have approved, you know. He always said the true legacy isn't in companies or money, but in the connections we make." When they returned to New York, much had changed. Lucy formally accepted the shares in the company and began working on establishing the Ibrahim and Amira Foundation. She kept her role as translator, but now she also attended board meetings as a shareholder. To the surprise of the staff, She often challenged Khalil on corporate decisions, and even more surprisingly, he usually listened. "I never thought I'd see the day when someone could get Mr. Al-Rashid to change his mind," Hassan commented after one particularly heated meeting. "He's learning to recognize good ideas, no matter where they come from," Lucy replied diplomatically. "He's learning a lot more than that," Hassan murmured with a knowing smile. Their relationship evolved day by day, navigating the tricky balance of being colleagues and a couple. There were heated arguments and even more intense reconciliations, moments of doubt and moments of crystal-clear certainty. Let's have a little fun for those who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now let's get back to the story. One spring evening, 6 months after their return from Dubai, Khalil took Lucy to dinner at the small Arab cafe where they had first met in Boston during that revealing visit. "Why here?" she asked, curious about the nostalgic choice. "I thought it would be fitting," he answered mysteriously. The elderly owner recognized them immediately and led them to a private table in the back. To Lucy's surprise, Farid was waiting, looking frail but radiant. "So good to see you both, my dears," he said, hugging them warmly. "Did you know about this?" Lucy asked Khalil. "Some surprises are necessary in life," he replied enigmatically. During dinner, Farid handed Lucy a small old box. "I found this among your grandfather's belongings that I kept, and I think he would want you to have it now." Inside was a delicate ring with an emerald surrounded by tiny diamonds. Lucy gasped as she recognized it from old photos of her grandmother. "This was my grandmother's engagement ring," she said, touched. "Ibrahim gave it to her after founding the company with us," Farid explained. "His first true act of success," he used to say. When she looked up, Khalil was no longer in his seat. To her shock, she found him kneeling beside her, his usually confident eyes now filled with vulnerability. "Lucy Mitchell," he began, his voice softer than she had ever heard, "when you walked into my life, you brought with you a kind of chaos I never knew I needed." "An interesting compliment," she said, her heart racing. "It's the truth." He smiled. "You challenge me, frustrate me, and make me want to be better than I am. More importantly, you make me want more from life than just work and duty." He gently took the ring out of the box. "I'm not asking because of our shared past or any obligation to our families. I'm asking because I can't imagine my future without you in it." Lucy felt tears welling up. "Lucy, would you give me the extraordinary honor of marrying me?" Time seemed to freeze as she looked at the man kneeling before her, no longer the intimidating CEO or the heir to an empire, but simply Khalil, the man she had come to love deeply. "On one condition," she finally replied. "Anything," he promised without hesitation. "Real vacations, at least 2 weeks a year, no phones, no laptops, no emergency meetings." He pretended to think seriously. "Tough negotiations, Miss Mitchell. Take it or leave it, Mr. Al-Rashid." "Of course I accept your terms," he answered, a smile growing on his face. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," she replied, pulling him into a kiss. "Definitely yes." Farid clapped joyfully, tears of happiness in his eyes. "Ibrahim, my friend," he whispered, looking upward. "Do you see this? Our families, finally united as they should be." The proposal quickly turned into a wave of family excitement that crossed international borders. Khalil's sister, Samira, flew in from Europe as soon as she heard, bringing a whirlwind of energy and wedding ideas with her. "Finally, someone cracked my robot brother's shell," she declared, hugging Lucy like they were lifelong friends, completely ignoring Khalil's exasperated look. Lucy instantly adored Samira. At 25, she was a more outgoing and carefree version of her brother, with the same piercing eyes but a far more frequent smile. "Tell me all his embarrassing secrets," Lucy begged during an afternoon of shopping. Samira smiled mischievously. "Well, there was the time when he was 16 and so nervous for a school debate that he wore his suit inside out. He didn't realize it until he was already on stage." "I don't believe it." Lucy laughed. "The always impeccable Khalil al-Rashid wore his suit inside out?" "Oh, that's not even the best part," Samira continued, leaning in like she was sharing state secrets. "He had a collection of miniature cars as a teenager. He spent hours organizing them by make, model, and year. He was absolutely obsessed." "That explains a lot," Lucy said, picturing a young Khalil meticulously cataloging tiny cars. Somehow it made him even more endearing. Wedding preparations quickly took on an international scale. Fareed insisted on a grand ceremony in Dubai, while Zoe pushed for something smaller in New York. Surprisingly, Lucy and Khalil agreed on a middle ground, Boston, where everything had begun, both for them and for their grandfathers decades earlier. Nothing too extravagant, Lucy insisted during a planning meeting. Define extravagant, Khalil replied cautiously. Fewer than 100 guests, no ice sculptures, no live peacocks roaming around, and definitely nothing that ends up in the newspapers. That eliminates half of Fareed's ideas, Khalil sighed, though he seemed secretly relieved. As the date drew closer, Lucy faced her own insecurities. One night, while they worked late at the office, a habit they hadn't quite broken, she finally voiced her concern. "I'm about to become an Al-Rashid," she murmured, staring at her computer screen. Khalil looked over his reading glasses. "Is that a problem?" "It's a name with a lot of weight, expectations, responsibilities." He closed his laptop and came closer, turning her chair to face him. "You can keep Mitchell if you want." "It's not that," she explained. "It's more the feeling of stepping into a world so different from mine. Your world has rules I don't even know exist." "My world," he repeated thoughtfully. "Lucy, since you came into it, my world isn't just mine anymore. It's ours, and the rules," he shrugged, a gesture that would have been unthinkable for the Khalil she first met. "The rules are being rewritten every day." He took her hands. "You've transformed Al-Rashid International in 6 months. The social programs you started, the new foundation, even the way we treat smaller vendors, all of that has your mark, and it's better because of you." Lucy felt her heart settle. "You really believe that?" "I believe that Ibrahim and my father would both be proud of what we're building together." He pulled her into his lap, a gesture of intimacy that still surprised her from someone once so formal. "Besides, we already make a formidable team. Marriage is just making it official." "A formidable team," she repeated, smiling. "I like that." On the night before the wedding, Lucy and Khalil broke tradition and spent the night together at an elegant hotel in Boston. At midnight, he surprised her with an unexpected gift. "Something old," he said, handing her an antique box. Inside was a weathered book of Arabic poetry. On the first page there was a dedication in familiar handwriting, "To Ibrahim, who sees beauty where others see only sand. Your eternal friend, Fareed, 1957. "How did you?" Lucy began, moved. "It was among the things Fareed kept. He wanted you to have it." She ran her fingers over the yellowed pages, imagining her grandfather reading those same words, maybe even in a room like this, since the hotel dated back to that time. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to fully express how much the gesture meant. He kissed her gently. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a big day." "Are you really going to sleep?" she teased. "Or are you going to review contracts until sunrise?" "Not a word about work until after the honeymoon," he promised solemnly. "Hassan has strict orders not to contact me unless the building is literally on fire." "Wow, you really are evolving, Mr. Al-Rashid." "All credit goes to my extraordinary translator," he said, pulling her closer. "She has a gift for helping me figure out what really matters." The ceremony the next morning was held in a historic garden near Ibrahim's old home. The place had been carefully decorated with wildflowers and simple lanterns, elegant without being showy, a perfect balance between their two worlds. Fareed, frail but glowing with happiness, sat in the front row. Beside him, a chair was left symbolically empty for Ibrahim, with his poetry book and a single white rose. Zoe, as maid of honor, looked like she still couldn't quite believe her once disheveled friend had transformed into a stunning bride in a simple but elegant dress. "If someone had told me a year ago you'd marry an Arab billionaire, I would have died laughing," she whispered as she adjusted Lucy's veil. "I'm not marrying an Arab billionaire," Lucy said softly. "I'm marrying Khalil." As she walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of white chairs, Lucy saw the exact moment Khalil spotted her. His usually composed face changed, showing such pure vulnerability and joy that she nearly forgot to breathe. Beside him, Hassan, serving as best man, looked equally amazed, though probably for different reasons. "He's smiling," he muttered loud enough for the guests in the front row to hear, causing affectionate laughter. The vows were exchanged in both English and Arabic, honoring both heritages. Lucy had spent weeks perfecting her pronunciation for the Arabic part, determined to honor not only Khalil, but also her grandfather's connection to the language. When it came time to exchange rings, Khalil surprised everyone by reciting a verse from the poetry book he had given Lucy. Two souls separated by time and circumstance finally meet like rivers to the sea. What was two is now one, not by losing their identity, but by multiplying their strength. Lucy's eyes filled with tears. She not only recognized the poem as one of her grandfather's favorites, but realized Khalil must have spent hours practicing the old pronunciation to say it perfectly. After the ceremony, the reception was a fascinating blend of cultures. Middle Eastern dishes were served alongside American classics. Traditional Arabic music blended with contemporary jazz. Business executives chatted warmly with Columbia academics and Lucy's friends from the university cafe. At the center of it all, Farid watched with clear satisfaction. When Lucy approached him during the party, he clasped her hands warmly. "My dear girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have brought redemption to two families. Ibrahim would be so proud." "Thank you for not giving up," she replied, "for searching for me, for telling the truth, for everything." "Some stories are meant to have a happy ending, even if they take decades," he said thoughtfully. "Now, go find your husband. He already looks lost without you, even after only 5 minutes." Sure enough, Khalil was scanning the room, looking for her. When their eyes met across the hall, he smiled in that special way he saved only for her. Later, during their first dance as a married couple, he held her like she was something precious and infinitely valuable. "Happy, Mrs. Al-Rashid Mitchell?" he asked, honoring her decision to keep both names. "More than happy," she answered. "And you, Mr. Al-Rashid, satisfied with your investment in a scruffy translator?" "Best business decision I ever made," he joked, spinning her gracefully. Then, more seriously, he added, "And the best personal decision too. You changed everything, Lucy. For the better, I hope. For infinitely better." He pulled her closer, whispering in her ear, "I think our grandfathers would be proud of what we built on top of their foundations." Lucy thought about the long and strange journey that had brought them here. From the disastrous first interview to the revelations in Boston, from heated arguments in corporate meetings to unexpected tender moments in Dubai. From what could have been a disaster, something beautiful and lasting had grown. "You know what else my grandfather wrote in that journal Farid found?" she asked. "What?" "True legacy isn't in companies or money, but in the connections we make. Everything else is just sand meant to be carried away by the wind." Khalil reflected on that. "Your grandfather was a wise man." "And here we are," Lucy continued, resting her head on his shoulder as they danced. "The most unlikely connection of all." "Unlikely, maybe," he agreed. "But somehow, also inevitable." The party went on late into the night, with Zoe eventually dragging the bride onto the dance floor while Samira managed to convince her normally serious brother to join a traditional Arabic dance, much to the guests' delight. Later, when they escaped to the bridal suite, exhausted but incredibly happy, Lucy found another surprise waiting for her. On the bed were 2 plane tickets and an itinerary. "A whole month?" she asked, shocked to see the length of the planned honeymoon. "You're really going to stay away from the office for an entire month?" "A promise is a promise," he replied solemnly. "No phones, no laptops, no emergency meetings. Hassan will probably have a nervous breakdown." "Hassan will be just fine. In fact, I think he's secretly relieved to have a month without me micromanaging everything." Lucy looked over the itinerary, which included Greece, Italy, and finally Lebanon, the homeland of Ibrahim and Farid. "This is perfect." "I thought we might want to see where it all began," Khalil explained. "Farid gave me the address of his family's old house in Beirut. Apparently, it's still there." Lucy felt touched that he understood so perfectly what that would mean to her. "Sometimes I think my grandfather planned all this somehow," she said, half joking. "Maybe he and Farid arranged our meeting from beyond." "If they did, I'll always be grateful to them," Khalil answered, pulling her into his arms. "Although I prefer to believe we found our own way to each other." "The flawless Mr. Al-Rashid, a secret romantic," she teased, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Who would have guessed?" "Only you," he answered softly. "Always only you." As they kissed, Lucy thought about all the unlikely circumstances that had brought them together. A spilled coffee, a translator's job, a long-lost family story. Small moments that, together, had created something extraordinary. The millionaire from Arabia and the poor student who became his translator had found much more than they ever expected. They found a shared legacy, a renewed purpose, and most importantly, they found each other. And that, Lucy reflected as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, was the kind of happy ending that even fairy tales couldn't imagine. What did you think of Khalil and Lucy's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our stories. And make sure to check out more inspiring stories by clicking right here on the end screen.